What is up, guys? Wrestling Premier is here. Montel Vontavious Porter, MVP, half man, half amazing. I personally believe he was capable of being a main eventer. Do I believe he should have been a main eventer? Yes, but you gotta realize that it's up to the talent themselves and most importantly, management to make that a reality. If WWE really wanted to, they could make Apollo Crews and even Shorty G like top guys, basically. Not face of the company or main event, but just notable wrestlers, basically. That's what I'm saying. Notable stars. With that said, this is the series where I answer the question as to why an individual didn't become a main eventer. You may already know exactly why, but I also cover the individual's career up to their release from WWE. You can go check out a couple of these videos. I made one on Carlito, I made one on Shelton Benjamin, there's Chris Masters, and a couple of others. Now, the reason why I haven't made one of these in 2 months is because, well, the last one wasn't really successful. Either it was because YouTube didn't promote the video, or you guys just weren't interested. But now I'm back, and obviously it's one of my more successful series, so why the hell wouldn't I make a video about why an individual didn't become a main eventer? As for my next one, well, I'm not sure. You can comment down below. You want Alex Riley, Evan Bourne, Umaga, Billy Gunn? Just comment it down below. Anyways, before I get into it, let me just say, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are on the road to 40K. It's just as simple as that. If you really like the channel, you love it, just hit that subscribe button. Anyways, let's get into it. Montel Vontavious Porter, real name Alvin Antonio Burke Jr., was born on October 28, 1973 in Miami, Florida. Burke's childhood, well, not much is known about it. His parents were divorced, but when he reached his teen years, this is when things began to change. There was nothing notable. I believe he did watch wrestling as a kid, but not as much as he would in the future. During this time, Burke began to hang out with some gangs, and that led him to the life of crime. Here's what he has to say, and before I mention these quotes, let me just say there's a lot of them in this video. So if you don't want any of these, just skip to the part which I listed down below. And I quote, "As a teenager, I was into gangs and guns and nonsense. I was all about robberies. I used to say the world was my ATM, and I ended up doing 6.5 months in the juvenile facility for robbery, armed robbery, aggravated assaults, grand theft auto, resisting arrest. It was a nice little crime spree I was on. But that wasn't it. When he was 16, Burke was involved in a heist. Along with 3 other men, they robbed a cruise ship. Once again, here he is. I robbed a casino on a cruise ship. It was like some Ocean's 11 type stuff. Nobody involved was over 21 at the time, and I just turned 16. One of my co-defendants had put together a plan because he used to work as security on the ship, and I was looking for that one more lick. I went on the cruise, I checked it out and thought, you know what, with a little refining, this actually could work. We reconfigured his plans and pulled it off. We made off with over 100 grand. One of my co-defendants, Dithead, left 80,000 behind. Following the heist, one of his partners in crime snitched, and Alvin was on the run. Here's what he has to say about how he got caught and all that stuff. Then I was on the run because this dude snitched. My father was a cop, facilitated my surrender. I turned myself in, and I didn't know I was facing 10 counts of armed kidnapping, but I was because there was 10 people in the casino we locked in the closet. I refused to give a statement, and I wouldn't cooperate. For that reason, I ended up getting the most time. They said, okay, you want to be a tough guy? We'll show you. After sitting in a county jail for a year, I ended up pleading guilty to 1 count of armed robbery and 10 counts of armed kidnapping in exchange for an 18.5-year sentence with a 3-year minimum mandatory for the sawed-off shotgun, of which I served 9.5. So, from 1990 all the way to 1999, Alvin Burke was in prison. In his time there, he converted to Islam and changed his name to Hassan Hamid Assad. After being released from prison, Assad took his correctional officer's advice and became a wrestler. This story makes me respect Vontavious Porter even more. The fact that he managed to turn his life around is astonishing. From prison to WrestleMania. Anyways, Assad was trained by both Soul Man Alex G and Norman Smiley of the Performance Center currently, and he made his debut in 2002. Assad wrestled in many indie promotions including IPW, FIP, and even Ring of Honor. He used to come out to Ludacris's Move Bish and even 50 Cent's Many Men. His ring name was Antonio Banks, and Banks also made a couple appearances in TNA, but that didn't lead to much. During this time period, Antonio Banks also made a couple appearances in WWE, where he was Kurt Angle's security guard. He was looking out for his gold medal. After some appearances here and there, Banks got the itch. He really wanted to get signed, so what did he do? He went up to Johnny Ace. Personally, I love this story. I read about it a while ago, and I just need to share it with you guys. I used to get booked as an extra for the WWE when they were coming to town, said MVP. And I remember roping Johnny Ace off one day, and I'm like, hey, Johnny, you got a minute? You got a minute? He said, I'm busy, kid. I said, Johnny, please, just 1 minute, just 30 seconds. Busy, kid. Johnny gave me 10 seconds. And he stops and goes, all right, kid, what? Just tell me what the... do I gotta do to get hired? I said it just like that. Johnny told me, he paused for a minute and looked at me like, do you know who I am? Talking to me like that? The other part was he was kind of like, this kid's got some balls, all right. So he said, look, we like you. We just don't have anything for you. So at this point, there was interest in Banks, and there was even plans to pair him up with Carlito, as Jesus suffered an injury and he was written off. There were plans for Banks to be flown in, and then he was going to debut. But then things took a U-turn. This is the part that makes me laugh. Just listen. This is it, right? I was chilling with this chick and things are about to get nice. We're having a nice little intimate moment. It's all good. Things are about to go down, if you will. My phone rings and I see it's that unknown number. I'm like, oh man, I'm waiting for a call from them. It's Tommy Dreamer and he says, hello, Antonio Banks. Creative has changed their mind. They're going in a different direction, so we're not going to be flying you in next week, but we'll see you when you come down in February. Take care. Bye. You want to talk about a heartbreak letdown? I'll tell you what. I kid you not. I looked at that chick. I got up. I walked out. She said, what's wrong? I said, I just got some really bad news. As I walked to the car, I was thinking, you bad luck. I'm never going to talk to you again. I never saw that girl again. Never called her. Never spoke to her. So, Antonio Banks blamed all of this on the girl. He looked at her in disgust. I'm imagining this whole situation transpire in my head. He wasn't even in the mood to have fun. Once he met up with Johnny Ace, head of talent relations, he let him know that he's got to stand out in order for them to sign him. So, Banks was a bit irate. He believed he had the talent and drive to be a WWE star, and while he was in Miami, a tremendous idea popped up in Banks' head. So he's working out or working down in South Beach, and used to notice some guys coming in, and they're just like overrated sports players. I'm not sure exactly who he was talking about, but I was just talking about those overpaid, overrated players that are only relevant for a few years. You know those type? He noticed how they're acting like divas, and they're babies, and everything's entitled to them and whatnot. So he decided, you know what? This hasn't been done in wrestling yet. Here he is once again. So I came up with this idea to take everything bad about Deion Sanders and Ocho Cinco and Terrell Owens and Rod Tidwell and Allen Iverson, everything you could think of bad, and apply it to a pro wrestler who comes into pro wrestling with a big ego, but a lot of ability. Whether or not that ability pans out depends on whether or not he showed up to play and put together this big treatment with promos. Because when I came up with this idea, I had a mutual friend, Ricky Santana, who's friends with Johnny Ace. I told him about my idea, but I was scared that they were going to steal it from me, and he said, let me talk to Johnny. He talked to Johnny and he said, I gave you my word, I'm not going to steal your stuff. So I could show it to creative, he said. Just give me 20 storylines and vignettes, and I said, alright. I basically gave them a step-by-step treatment of the MVP character. And so there it is. Montel Vontavious Porter was born. This character did stand out at the time. I mean, we all know about those sports divas like you just mentioned. T.O., Chad Johnson. Anyways, there weren't any vignettes for Montel Vontavious Porter's arrival. He just debuted straight up on the August 4th, 2006 episode of SmackDown. MVP's character, you already know what he was. He was seen as the most valuable free agent of that time period. And over the next couple of weeks, Porter delayed the contract signing. The reason why he was delaying this contract signing was because he was holding out for more money. He called himself a bigger star than anyone on the roster, and just when Teddy Long spoke about the contract negotiations, he just changes the subject and leaves. This would finally culminate on September 26, 2006, when MVP finally signed that damn contract, making him in kayfabe the highest paid athlete in SmackDown history. Teddy Long must have really overpaid for this guy. Montel Vontavious Porter would finally make his debut at No Mercy. He brought out the inflatable tunnel, and as a kid, I really wanted to go through it. JBL was bearing him on commentary, calling him a Power Ranger, and who could blame him? Like in storyline, he was overpaid, he looked like a Power Ranger, and his opponent was a jobber by the name of Marty Garner. If you know this guy's story, then what do I have to say? But if you don't, this was the same guy that got a pedigree that nearly broke his neck. He suffered a neck injury and whatnot, but I believe he's good nowadays. This was also the first time JBL and Michael Cole actually agreed on something, because over the past couple of months, they disagreed over Bobby Lashley, Rey Mysterio, Machismo, whatever the hell JBL was disagreeing with. But for this night, they actually agreed, like MVP, he's not backing up his abilities. As for Porter, he made easy work of Garner to win the match. So at this point, MVP had basically finessed Teddy Long. On the October 13th episode of SmackDown, MVP came out and he begged Teddy Long to bring him some competition. Long said, you know what, sure, here's some competition, and you know who came out? Kane. This is the first time Kane was a SmackDown superstar. It was his debut match on SmackDown. Right when the bell was about to ring, MVP grabbed his arm twice before Kane got fed up and just went after MVP. MVP did take the advantage throughout this exchange for a bit, but Kane started to make a comeback and he just ran away. He was like, I'm out of here. Over the next couple of weeks, MVP would escape Kane on many occasions. He would dodge Kane by low-blowing him in a match to cause a DQ. An episode of SmackDown in England saw MVP defeat Kane in a street fight after Mr. Kennedy interfered. And the week after that, MVP escaped the cage to beat Kane again. So Teddy Long decided, you know what, this guy's going to try to rip me off. He finessed me once, he won't do it again. So at Armageddon, he is going to face Kane in an Inferno match. And if he refuses to compete, then his ass is fired. As for that match, MVP got burned. It's simple as that. Kane dragged Porter into the fire and he barely touched, but still, MVP got burned. And as a result of this in storyline, he suffered first-degree burns. Due to this incident, JBL would cut a promo on that week's SmackDown, and from there on, he would never hate MVP. He would praise him on commentary, calling him the most valuable player on SmackDown and all that stuff. Following Armageddon, MVP was out for about a month to recover from his first-degree burns, and upon his return, he placed the blame on Teddy Long, and rightfully so. As for the Kane feud, well, MVP did face him on the final SmackDown before the Rumble. That match ended in a DQ after MVP got himself disqualified, and he was hell-bent on dousing Kane in gasoline and burning him. But he failed in his efforts, and he ran away. Now, the feud between MVP and Kane was in the past. Now it was time to move on to a feud with the United States Champion, Chris Benoit. At this point, MVP was an unproven commodity. He had yet to show off why WWE signed him. Sure, he had the promo skills and the charisma, but we didn't get to see his in-ring skills just yet. On the March 9, 2007 episode of SmackDown, MVP barged into Teddy Long's office and he caught him checking out Crystal Marshall on a laptop. MVP called her a chicken head and Teddy, like a simp, defended her. A little side note, he ain't a simp. He actually got her in the end, and that's a whole nother story for another day. If you guys want it, I will add it to one of those polls in the future. Porter gave Teddy Long some stern words, and he demanded that he faces Chris Benoit at WrestleMania. Eventually, that match was booked. Now, in order to prove just how great of a wrestler he was, MVP walked out to the ring the following week to face the champion of Honduras, El Grande Latte. The hell? The skill level between the two was enormous. Boom. Playmaker, and that's all she wrote. He once again declared his intentions for the U.S. title, claiming he'll represent America much better than the boring and uncharismatic Chris Benoit. The champion came out and they brawled, and the reason why Benoit did come out wasn't just because of those statements that MVP made, but also because he called him a coward. The champion nearly locked MVP in the crossface, but the challenger escaped. Heading into WrestleMania, MVP continued to train for the match by facing two more national champions. First, he faced the champion of Liechtenstein, and would you look at that? Cedric Von Hausen. Yeah, he looks familiar, alright. MVP made easy work of him before facing the champion of Ethiopia, Bito Batamango. I'm not sure. MVP at this point was on cruise control and he wasn't even trying. He did take a page out of Chris Benoit's book to some Germans, but overall it wasn't even much. He didn't try to show off his flashy skills. He was just doing what he does on a regular basis. As for the WrestleMania match, shockingly good. Up to that point, MVP never got to show off his skills, but Benoit on this night managed to bring out the best in Montel Vontavious Porter. If you want to check out my match analysis on this, check out this video if you haven't. Throughout the match, MVP worked on Benoit's arm, and he was focusing on avoiding the crossface. It did work out for him during the match, and he did stop Benoit dead in his tracks throughout the bout. But Benoit was clutch just like Kobe during that month, and managed to get through SmackDown's most valuable layer. Well, in his eyes. They had the sequel a few weeks later, and it did deliver, but their matches on pay-per-view were much better. Backlash was decent, but the Judgment Day match, that was the one I enjoyed the most. It was 2 out of 3 falls. It was pretty good. It felt like MVP worked on neutralizing Chris Benoit, and with the experience of the 3 other matches, he worked on Benoit's leg for a while, and that's what got MVP the first fall. He capitalized on the injury to connect with the playmaker, and he was basically spamming. It worked for him, and as for the second fall, Benoit started to make a comeback despite the leg, but it wasn't working out for him on this night. MVP was locking in holds. He was literally just neutralizing the knee. He didn't really hit Benoit in the face that much. He was just focused on destroying the knee. Benoit did fight back, and he kind of locked in the crossface, but MVP escaped, and he rolled up Benoit in the knee in order to capture the United States Championship for the first time in his career. The story of the match, basically, knee, oh, and knee. It's simple as that. One thing I liked about this match is the fact that MVP didn't really cheat. Sure, Finlay attacked Benoit on SmackDown, but in my eyes, I'd like to see this as a clean sweep. 2-0. This title victory basically legitimized MVP, and you should go look at him before Judgment Day and afterwards. He was slowly gaining traction, and he stopped looking like a Power Ranger. Personally, I didn't even care if he wore the Power Ranger suit, but some did. They were just making fun of him. He started to become a focal point on SmackDown, and one of his first feuds as champion was against Matt Hardy. Now, I'm not sure if you watched it, but here's the video I made on their feud. Long story short, MVP and Matt started off as enemies. They were then placed in a tag team, and they had some entertaining segments, and eventually they won the gold. Over time, MVP continued to evade Matt Hardy's title match requests up until Matt finally called him out on it on an episode of SmackDown. They then lost the tag team titles, and MVP decided to destroy Matt's knee. When Matt finally returned, he got his title match, and he beat MVP, marking Montel Vontavious Porter's title reign at 343 days. At this point, it was the longest U.S. title reign in WWE history. Not WCW or NWA. And overall, it was a fun feud, and I suggest you watch some of their segments if you haven't. The basketball one, the Evander Holyfield one, the pizza one. All of them, basically. All of them are essential, I guess. Following Backlash, MVP's push was suddenly halted. It was revealed that this was due to MVP's comments towards a drug tester, and rumor has it he insulted the guy, stating something along the lines of, "You went to school for 4 years to watch people's pee-pee, I guess?" Following this statement, MVP went on a huge losing streak. He was a shell of himself at this point, and no longer did we see the flashy and flamboyant Montel Vontavious Porter. The funny part in all of this was the fact that MVP needed one more win in order for his incentive bonuses to kick in. He didn't win those matches, and they took away the inflatable tunnel eventually. So how in the hell was MVP going to get out of this rut? Over the next couple of weeks, the fans slowly began to sympathize with MVP. He was losing to the likes of Kung Fu Naki. At this point, if one of us faced MVP, then it would have been a guaranteed victory. But the most notable moment, although it's not even that notable, I just learned about it today, but it feels notable to me, was on the November 21st, 2008 episode of SmackDown. On that night, MVP got his final chance to get the incentive bonus. He was booked against a local competitor, and now you obviously know the result. I mean, looking at the match, you obviously know the result. They're not going to have MVP lose to a jobber, right? Right? Hell no. Kali distracted MVP, and in the end, the local competitor won this match, meaning MVP no longer has an incentive bonus. He's just like everyone else now on the roster. Every time you saw MVP, he was a miserable human being. He was on an extraordinary losing streak, and there was no end in sight. He was looking to take that incentive and buy holiday gifts for his family and loved ones, but now that's gone. This was around the same time the Detroit Lions were on a losing streak too. He was so damn depressed, he was just going through the emotions on the VIP lounge. Mr. Kennedy, a rival of MVP's, was so annoyed at Porter's performances that he came out and just told him, like, you gotta win. He wanted MVP to win, and he had enough of seeing MVP as a depressed individual. At one point, MVP was speaking when some guys came in and repossessed his furniture. That's how bad things got at this point. Well, things were finally going to get better for Montel Vontavious Porter. On the January 16th, 2009 episode of SmackDown, Vicky Guerrero booked MVP in a last man standing match against The Big Show, and if he loses, then Triple H is out of the Royal Rumble. The game was so sure that MVP was losing because he's been losing. It's simple as that. I mean, at this point, it was on a 23-match losing streak, I believe. As for that match, he suffered a beating at the hands of The Big Show, but he refused to give up. MVP was resilient throughout the bouts, but Big Show was looking to chokeslam him off the stage when Triple H from out of nowhere blasted Big Show with the sledgehammer. MVP slowly got up, and he actually won. Now, a little side note, Triple H was barred from ringside. Keyword ringside. He wasn't at ringside, and so he interfered. This victory straight up turned MVP into a babyface. He was finally flying high and balling. He was back to his winning ways, and he let the fans know that he's back. Now he's looking to win the United States Championship, and only then he'll truly be balling. Following this, MVP went on a winning streak of sorts, and this got him on Shelton Benjamin's radar. He finally got his title match on the March 20th episode of SmackDown, and on that night, he finally captured the gold. Now, this was around the time period where the crowd really started to like MVP. It felt like maybe he did actually have some potential as a babyface. Following this, he was drafted to Raw, and looking back, I personally feel like this was the time they should have pulled the trigger. I honestly feel like Randy Orton MVP in 2009 could have been decent or even good. But once MVP got himself comfortable with Monday nights, he wasn't progressing as well as he should have been. He was stuck in the mid-card scene throughout 2009, and he did team up with Mark Henry. It was decent, but both men in my eyes deserved a chance to be higher up the card. Henry was capable as evident of 2011 later on, and MVP, well, he should have just gotten one chance. I mean, if Vladimir Kozlov got one, why can't MVP? Once 2010 rolled around, it felt like MVP's main event window was closing. Along with Carlito and Chris Masters, these guys were left behind in favor of guys like Dolph Ziggler, The Miz, and Jack Swagger. Now, it wasn't like MVP was irrelevant. I'm not one of those people that say, oh, if you're not a main eventer, you're irrelevant. That's not what I think. He was pretty relevant. I just believe he deserved to have one shot at being a main eventer. It's as simple as that. He was right in the mid-card scene, and he was in some marquee matches, but at this point, he wasn't exactly happy. I believe he was going to team up with Loki after having been his pro in NXT, but that never happened. He just got a new theme song, but it wasn't even used for long, and while making this video, I just learned about it. His final match came on the December 3rd, 2010 episode of SmackDown, and the day beforehand, he had asked and was granted his release. Why did MVP leave WWE? He wanted to achieve his dream to wrestle in New Japan Pro Wrestling. His goal was WWE and WrestleMania, but the dream New Japan and Wrestle Kingdom. His run in New Japan was notable for the fact that he beat Okada and Naito, then Yano, to become the very first IWGP Intercontinental Champion. I believe New Japan was looking to expand into the US so they had him win the title, but overall it's a funny story because MVP could come up to you and say, you know, I beat Naito and Okada. And those two, especially Okada, are seen as some of the best wrestlers in the world. The absolute best of the best. After a few years with New Japan, which saw him wrestle at Wrestle Kingdom successfully, MVP moved on to Impact, where he formed a group known as the Beatdown Clan, along with Low-Key, Samoa Joe, Lashley, Hernandez, and yeah, he had this investor gimmick there too. And following his run in Impact, MVP joined Major League Wrestling, where he worked as an agent. He also had a couple of matches there, and he also made a couple appearances in Ring of Honor last year before finally returning to WWE at the Royal Rumble. Now, he did appear on the 25th anniversary show of Raw 2 years earlier, but this was the first time MVP actually appeared in a ring. Personally, I was glad to see MVP back. I wanted to hear that theme song 1, 2, you hear the clock ticking, and it's just awesome. I feel like there's some value in having him as a manager, and that's exactly what they're doing right now. I mean, he could be managing the next WWE champion, Bobby Lashley, so who knows? Now, as for why MVP didn't become the world champion, this is what he believes, and I do too. I believe this is the only reason why he didn't win the title. And I quote, there was a time, it was relayed to me by some of the writers who I had become friends with and people higher up on the chain, that there was talk about me having a world championship run. But there was a lot of hesitation because there were certain countries that wouldn't allow me in because of my violent felony past. And I can't blame WWE for that. That's a business decision, but I'm like, damn, I'm still paying. All these years later, I'm still paying, MVP explained. If the laws are set up that you are released from prison, then once the rules of our society have established that you are allowed to be back in society, then you should have the rights of every other member of society. That's my take. And there it is. I personally believe if MVP did debut in 2010, perhaps he would have won the title, I guess. And if Jack Swagger got a run with the world title, then why can't MVP? I mean, he was certainly capable of it. MVP, though, was thankful of the opportunity Vince gave him when no one else, barring minimum wage, would give him. And overall, he had a pretty impressive career. A former WWE Tag Team Champion, 2-time United States Champion, the very first IWGP Intercontinental Champion, same as AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, and many other guys. And right now, he manages perhaps a future World Champion. So there it is, MVP. What do you guys think? Comment down below what you think about MVP and if you think he was main event quality. Yeah, a little side note, I wanted to mention this, but I couldn't find a moment to mention this, but MVP revealed in an interview that he hated the theme song, "Hey, I'm Coming," which reminds me of another story. You could go read that over there. There it is. That is just too hilarious. Like, what can I say about that? And yeah, that's it for this video. I believe my next video is on Backlash. It won't even be that long, but I'm going to review it as quickly as I can, and I owe you guys this. And I got to test out some current day topics. We got to do this. I gotta see if I'm capable of making these kinds of videos. So yeah, that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the 305 on the like button and perhaps a playmaker on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.